Luke!
My dude.
You ready to help me tell one of my favorite Bible stories tonight?
Yes.
Good. Ladies and gentlemen, today our story features two heroes from the Bible by the name...
men.
We're going to do this again, aren't we?
Yeah, what?
Two heroes from the Bible by the name of Paul and Silas.
Two men alone in a world by themselves.
Every time y'all laugh, it just encourages it, okay? Paul and Silas were God-fearing men traveling all around telling people about Jesus. They were apostles.
Apostrophes?
No apostrophes, that's punctuation. They were apostles.
Oh,
Yeah.
Possums. They were possums. Like they roll around the trash and sleep upside down, you know?
No, apostles were like missionaries. See, Paul and Silas would ride up to a town, they'd knock on the gate, and they'd minister to people. People responded to them in different ways. Often folks would listen to them. Some people would even fall to their knees. Repent of their sins.
Oh, Lord, forgive me.
You still repenting?
I did it.
But other times they get mad. I mean, really mad. They'd grab Paul and Silas and they'd kick them out of the town. Even if this sort of thing happened, Paul and Silas would pick themselves up, they'd brush themselves off, and they'd head to another town. One day, Paul and Silas decided to head to a place called Macedonia.
Ooh, macadamia. I love those cookies.
Macedonia.
I never heard of it.
Yeah. Now, Macedonia was kind of a spooky place.
Ooh.
It was known to be full of thieves, pickpocketers, lowlives, the worst kind of people around. And among these people lived a lady.
I'm a lady.
No, see, it wasn't really like that. This lady was actually pretty wicked.
I'm a lady.
This lady worked for a group of men who were very corrupt, and she was considered horrible, sinister, terrifying, and just plain nasty. When Paul and Silas arrived in Macedonia, there were some folks there who greeted them with open arms.
Ooh, how are you guys doing? Can we get anything? Abs, desserts, pizza, Twinkies, Starburst.
These people were excited to listen to Paul and Silas, but unfortunately, as they were ministering to a crowd one day, the crazy wicked lady showed up.
Guess who's back? The crazy lady.
In the middle of their sermon, this lady began to make a spectacle of herself.
Look at me.
She started flailing her arms and getting all the attention on herself. She was even spreading gossip about Paul and Silas.
Hey, come here. I heard these guys were possums.
It's apostles.
Possums.
Upon closer look, Paul and Silas realized that this lady was not actually weird, but she was an evil fortune teller. After days and days of hooting and hollering from the crazy lady, Paul had had enough. So he turned to that lady
and punched her in the face.
Oh, it's not part of the story, man. What was that?
Well, she should have saw it coming. She was a fortune teller.
That's a good point. The men were very angry because Paul had healed her, and it made the bad men she worked for very upset. So they tied up Paul and Silas, and they threw them in a dungeon. People gathered around and started beating them, hitting them with rocks. Yeah. There lay Paul and Silas, shackles around their legs and hands, barely able to breathe, in the worst dungeon of a jail cell you've ever seen. With no hope of escaping on their own, they needed saving. They needed the power of God to rescue them. Knowing full well how to open up God's power, they began to lift their hands, praising God and thanking Him for rescuing them. Suddenly and without warning, the ground began to shake. The walls began to move. The cell bars began to rattle. As Paul and Silas gave thanks to God, an earthquake began to move, and the very foundation they were standing on began to shake. Before they knew it, the jail cell doors were rattled off and fell to the ground. It's an earthquake.
Yeah, it's a big one. It's a 7.0.
Even the shackles on their feet and hands were shaken loose. Paul and Silas were saved. What the devil meant for bad, Paul and Silas show us that if you give thanks to God, it opens up his power to help. Not only that, but the very people that threw Paul and Silas in prison begged for their forgiveness, promising never again to harm them in any way. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for the master of sound effects.